The autumn leaves crunched under my boots as I took my usual shortcut through Maplewood Park. Golden afternoon light filtered through the branches, painting the path in dappled shadows. That's when I saw it, a small, trembling shape pressed against the gnarled trunk of an ancient oak. My breath caught as I moved closer. A puppy. A German shepherd no bigger than my backpack, his black and tan fur matted with dirt and leaves. Thick rope dug into his neck and belly, forcing one front leg to twist at an unnatural angle. His entire body shook with shallow, panicked breaths. Those terrified brown eyes locked onto mine, and in that moment, my whole world narrowed to this broken little soul and the single burning question. Who could do this to an innocent life? He didn't bark or growl as I approached, just pressed himself flatter against the bark, as if hoping the tree might swallow him whole. Up close, I could see the rope had sawed through his fur in places, leaving angry red marks around his neck. His paws were raw from struggling, tiny claws broken and splintered. When I reached out, he flinched so violently his head smacked against the tree. A whimper escaped his throat, not the playful yip of a puppy, but the broken sound of a creature that had given up. My vision blurred as I noticed the dried tear tracks cutting through the dirt on his face. How many hours had he spent here, alone and hurting, waiting for anyone to care? My fingers trembled as I clawed at the knot, but it was pulled impossibly tight. The kind of knot you'd use to secure a boat in a hurricane, not restrain a baby animal. The coarse fibers had rubbed his skin raw in a perfect ring around his neck. When I touched the swollen flesh beneath, he didn't even cry out, just closed his eyes like he'd learned pain was inevitable. I yanked at the rope until my nails split, but it wouldn't budge. A rustling in the bushes made us both startle. For one wild moment, I thought his abuser might be returning. But it was just the wind carrying another dead leaf to the ground. The park was empty. No witnesses, no help, just me, this broken puppy, and the fading afternoon light. The notebook paper flapped in the breeze, secured with a single strip of yellowing tape. My hands shook as I peeled it free. In uneven block letters, it read, "His name is Jax. I can't keep him. Please be kind. He loves people." The words blurred before my eyes. Loves people? Then why leave him tied so tight he could barely breathe? Why not take him to a shelter? The paper was damp from morning dew. He'd been here all night alone in the dark, wondering why his humans never came back. Jax let out a shuddering sigh, his body sagging against the rope like a marionette with cut strings. That's when I understood. The note wasn't for him. It was so whoever found him wouldn't think badly of the monster who left him here. Jax. The name echoed in my head as I dialed animal control with numb fingers. "There's a puppy tied to a tree near the west entrance," I choked out. He's in bad shape." While we waited, I crouched beside him, murmuring nonsense. How brave he was, how soft his ears looked under all that dirt. His tail gave the faintest twitch when I scratched behind one ear. Just once, like he was testing if kindness could be real after everything. The rope creaked as he shifted, and I winced. Every passing minute felt like an eternity. Then footsteps. I turned, hoping for help, but it was just some guy in neon running gear, earbuds dangling. He slowed, pulled out his phone, snapped a picture, and kept jogging like he'd just seen an interesting cloud formation. "Hey!" I called after the jogger, voice cracking. "Can you help me with this?" He paused just long enough to shrug. "Poor little guy," he said, already moving away. Someone should do something. The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. Jax wasn't some sad meme to scroll past. He was flesh and blood, trembling at my feet. I attacked the knot again, tearing at it until my fingertips bled. Jax yelped when the rope jerked, and I immediately stilled. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered, pressing my forehead to his. The rope had baked in the sun all day, hot enough to burn my palms. I used my sweater to shield his raw neck from the rough fibers, counting seconds until help arrived. The animal control van bounced down the path, its county logo gleaming in the late afternoon light. A woman with salt and pepper hair piled in a messy bun hopped out Lara, according to her badge. She took one look at the situation and sighed, a sound that spoke volumes about how often she saw this kind of thing. Without a word, she pulled a folding knife from her belt. Jax shrank back when he saw the blade, but Lara worked with practiced efficiency. The rope fell away with a thud. Jax didn't move, didn't run, just sat there shaking, like freedom was a concept he couldn't quite grasp anymore. Dehydrated. Probably hypoglycemic, Lara muttered, running expert hands over his body. No major wounds though. That's something. She handed me a slip lead. You riding with us? I didn't even have to think. Try to stop me. The jogger's face haunted me during the bumpy ride to the shelter. That detached pity. The way he'd framed Jax's suffering for his Instagram feed. In the back of the van, Jax lay curled in my lap, his nose tucked under his tail like he was trying to disappear again. Lara met my eyes in the rearview mirror. See it all the time, she said quietly. People don't want to get their hands dirty. I stroked Jax's matted fur. My jaw clenched so tight it ached. Maybe that jogger would post his photo with a sad emoji and feel like he'd done his part. But Jax needed more than hashtags and thoughts. He needed someone to show up and stay. The shelter's chain-link fence loomed ahead, and my stomach twisted. They were going to make me leave him here, at least for now. The shelter smelled of industrial cleaner and 100 different animal fears. Jax pressed against my legs as we walked through the buzzing fluorescent hallways, his nails clicking nervously on the tile. The intake clerk barely looked up from her computer as she slid paperwork across the counter. 7-day stray hold, she said in a voice worn smooth by repetition. In case an owner comes forward. I barked a laugh that made Jax flinch. Owner? The note proved they'd abandoned him deliberately. But rules were rules. When a tech came to lead Jax away, he planted his feet and looked back at me, his ears flattening. That one glance shattered something in my chest. I'll come back, I promised, voice thick. Every day. The kennel door clanged shut behind him with finality. Outside in the parking lot, I sat in my car and sobbed until my ribs ached. 7 days. What if someone claimed him? What if they hurt him again? That night, I stared at my bedroom ceiling, replaying the way Jax's eyes had tracked me as they led him away. The shelter's words echoed in the dark. If no one claims him in a week, you can start the adoption process. 7 days of Jax alone in a concrete kennel, wondering if he'd been abandoned all over again. I rolled over and grabbed my phone, pulling up the photo I'd taken of that damned note. He loves people, it said. The bitter irony kept me awake until 2 a.m. At 3, I gave up on sleep and drove to the 24-hour Walmart. The cashier raised an eyebrow at my purchases. A plush dog bed, a bag of premium puppy food, and the most heavy-duty chew toy on the shelf. Just in case, I told her, though we both knew there was no just in case about it. That puppy had already chewed through every defense I had. The shelter smelled of antiseptic and despair as I walked through the rows of barking dogs on day 2. Jax's kennel was in the back, the quiet section for special cases. He lay curled in the far corner like a comma, facing the wall. Hey, sweet boy, I whispered, kneeling to push a piece of hot dog through the bars. He didn't stir, not even a twitch of his ear. The attendant sighed. He's shut down. Won't eat, won't drink unless we're not looking. My throat tightened as I noticed the untouched kibble from yesterday. The water bowl was full too. He'd been lapping at it only at night, when no one could see his weakness. I pressed my palm against the cold metal grate. I'm not giving up on you, I promised his hunched shoulders. Day 4. Same routine. Me sitting cross-legged outside his kennel, reading aloud from Where the Red Fern Grows. Jax hadn't touched the roast beef I'd brought yesterday. But then a miracle. As I turned a particularly dog-eared page, a soft scuffling sound. I held my breath. Jax was sitting up, not approaching but watching. His chocolate brown eyes tracked the movement of my fingers turning pages. Slowly, so slowly I almost missed it, he stretched one paw forward. Then another. My heart hammered against my ribs as he stopped just out of reach, nostrils flaring as he sniffed the air between us. When our eyes met, his tail gave the faintest wag. Just once, like he wasn't sure he remembered how. I was sorting through my mother's boxes in the attic when the envelope slipped out. Jackin, age 10, with Princess. The photo showed me grinning, cradling a black and tan German Shepherd puppy that looked eerily like Jack's. My vision blurred. Princess had been my shadow after Dad left, my comfort when kids at school were cruel. The day we put her down at 14, I swore I'd never love a dog again. Now here I sat, 20 years later, sobbing over a puppy I'd known for less than a week. Jax chose that moment to nose open the attic door, his new collar jingling. When he saw me crying, he did something extraordinary. He climbed into my lap, just like Princess used to, and licked the tears right off my cheeks. He took the picture gently between his teeth, no chewing, just carrying, and trotted downstairs. I followed, mystified, as he delivered it to the empty dog bed in my bedroom. Then he circled 3 times and flopped down right on top of Princess's image, looking up at me with those soulful eyes. My knees gave out. It was too perfect, too impossible. Had he somehow known, recognized her? Or was I just a lonely woman seeing what I wanted to see? Jax answered by resting his chin on my knee with a sigh that seemed to say, "I'm here now." That's when I knew, whether by fate or coincidence. This broken puppy was stitching me back together. The storm hit at midnight, one of those summer tempests that shakes the windows. Jax bolted upright from his bed, trembling so violently I heard his tags jangling across the room. Before I could react, he'd scrambled into the walk-in closet, wedging himself behind my winter coats. I found him there, panting, eyes wild with memories I couldn't see. Was it the storm? Or did the thunder remind him of that tree, of the night someone left him to die? I didn't try to drag him out, just grabbed a pillow and blanket and squeezed in beside him. "You're safe now," I murmured as the lightning flashed. Took 2 hours, but eventually his shaking stopped. When he rested his head on my thigh, I knew we weren't just healing each other. We were becoming family. Dr. Alvarez's brow furrowed as she ran the scanner over Jax's shoulder blades. "No microchip," she confirmed. Then she paused, lifting his front paw. "But he's got this." A tiny, faded tattoo. Just 3 numbers, 217. The vet's face darkened. "Puppy mill ID. They do this when they plan to breed them young." My stomach turned. Jax hadn't just been abandoned. He'd escaped something worse. The vet continued her exam, finding scars between his toes, from wire cages, and worn teeth, from chewing bars. Yet when she listened to his heart, she smiled. Strong heartbeat. "And look at this." She pointed to his tail, which was wagging lazily as he licked her stethoscope. "After all that, he still trusts." The shelter paperwork was final, legally cleared for adoption. No one had come forward. No one had even called. As I signed the forms, Cheryl from intake shook her head. "Happens more than you'd think. People buy these designer mixes on a whim, then dump them when they realize puppies are work." My pen dug into the paper. Jax wasn't designer anything. He was a living, breathing soul who'd known more pain in 4 months than most dogs do in a lifetime. Across the room, Jax sat patiently in his new harness, watching me with quiet devotion. When our eyes met, his tail thumped the floor. In that moment, I made a silent vow. However long it took, however much it cost, I'd make sure he never felt unwanted again. He sniffed every inch of the living room like a detective, pausing at the couch with ears cocked. When I patted the cushion, he backed away. It took 3 days before he'd even put his front paws up. Turned out his hesitation wasn't about furniture. It was about permission. The first time he gathered the courage to climb up, he looked at me like I might strike him. Instead, I covered him with the blanket my grandmother had knitted. He fell asleep with his head on my thigh, sighing like he'd finally found his place in the world. That blanket became his security object. He'd drag it from room to room, making nests like he was storing up safety for leaner times. The doorbell rang at 7:30 p.m. A woman in a county uniform stood on my porch holding a clipboard. "Miss Carter?" "We've had a complaint." My blood turned to ice. Someone, probably that jogger, had reported me for dog theft. The officer was polite but firm. Without definitive proof of abandonment, Jax technically still belonged to whoever left that note. I handed her the vet's report about the puppy mill tattoo, my hands shaking. "Look at his scars," I pleaded. "Does this look like a loved pet?" Jax chose that moment to amble into the room, take one look at the uniform, and promptly vomit on her shoes. The officer sighed, stepping back. "Ma'am, I think we both know this dog has chosen his person." It was the shelter director herself, Cheryl's boss. "There's been a development," she said gravely. My knees buckled, but then she smiled. "We just got a call from the district attorney's office. They're prosecuting a puppy mill operation based on your vet's report." She handed me an official-looking document. "Jax is material evidence." "Which means—" I held my breath. "He's legally yours until trial, and almost certainly permanently after." I burst into tears right there on the porch. Jax, sensing the shift, trotted over and leaned his full weight against my legs, his version of a hug. The director chuckled. "He's not just evidence, Miss Carter. He's a survivor. And from what I've seen today, so are you." Mrs. Henderson from across the street cornered me at the mailbox, her pinched face full of disapproval. "That aggressive dog of yours barked all afternoon," she snapped. My hands clenched around Jax's leash. He'd been with me at work all day. Before I could respond, Jax did something remarkable. He sat politely, offered his paw to shake, and whined softly like a wounded puppy. Mrs. Henderson recoiled as if he'd growled. The next morning, I found a casserole on my porch with a note. From Gladys Henderson. Maybe he just needed kindness. Jax wagged his tail so hard his whole body wriggled. At the pet store, a woman in a designer coat sneered at Jax's scars. "People should really fix their mutts before breeding them." Jax's ears flattened. Then he deliberately knocked over a display of gourmet dog treats with his tail. As the clerk scrambled to clean up, the woman slipped on a wayward biscuit and landed right in the pile. Jax trotted over and dropped a $20 bill he'd found, probably from her purse, at my feet. The clerk burst out laughing. "I think your dog just made a charitable donation. First it was socks, then my missing hairbrush. Then one morning, I woke to find Jax proudly presenting my car keys, still dangling from the ignition. "Buddy, we need to talk about your definition of gifts," I groaned. But when he started bringing me the newspaper every morning, albeit slightly chewed, and my slippers at bedtime, always the right foot first, I realized he wasn't just fetching. He was participating, building rituals, claiming his place in our little pack. The day he dragged in a squeaky toy he'd clearly bought himself, judging by the pet store receipt in his mouth. I laughed until tears streamed down my face. Mr. Petrovsky had yelled at us twice for excessive tail wagging near his roses. Then his wife, a frail woman with Alzheimer's, wandered outside in her nightgown during one of her confused episodes. Jax broke his sit-stay and trotted over. Instead of jumping, he lay down and rested his head in her lap. Mrs. Petrovsky, who hadn't spoken in months, murmured, "Dobry pies," good dog in Polish. Now every Tuesday, Jax helps with her physical therapy by carefully walking beside her walker, his tail keeping perfect tempo with her shuffling steps. The courtroom erupted when the puppy mill owner was sentenced. Outside, reporters swarmed. "What's next for you two?" one asked. I looked down at Jax, now muscular and glossy-coated. His scars faded to silver lines. "We're starting a rescue," I said without thinking. Jax woofed his approval. That night, I found him helping again. He dragged all my savings bonds from the filing cabinet and arranged them in a neat pile by the door. When I called the shelter to ask about fostering, Cheryl laughed. "We've been waiting for this call. Jax has been bringing us applicants for months." Turns out, he'd been sneaking off to interview strays during our park walks. Second Chance Shepherds opened in a donated warehouse space. Our logo? A silhouette of Jax with his trademark head tilt. He appointed himself official greeter, assessing each new arrival with gentle sniffs. The ones who flinched got his special treatment. He'd bring them toys backwards in his mouth, like a peace offering. Our first success story was a scarred female named Luna. When her adopter cried during the handoff, Jax did something extraordinary. He licked her tears, then Luna's, then mine. The family sent photos every month. In every one, Luna slept with the toy Jax had given her. One arrived at 3 a.m. Your video of Jax's recovery saved my life. Attached was a photo of a veteran with his new service dog, a shepherd with the same tattoo as Jax. Another came from a shelter worker. We call our toughest cases Jax dogs now. But the one that wrecked me was from a little girl. I was sad about my scars until I saw Jax's. Now I think they're stars where the light got in. I read it aloud to Jax. He promptly stole the paper and buried it in his treasure pile. His highest honor. The party was supposed to be simple. Just our rescue volunteers and a dog-friendly cake. Then a car pulled up. Out stepped Lara, the animal control officer, with 3 former shelter dogs now in K9 units. Cheryl brought a puppy mill survivor we'd placed. Even Mrs. Henderson came, bearing a sweater she'd knitted, with excessive tail wagging room. But the real surprise? A video call from the district attorney, announcing Jax would receive the first ever Paw of Courage award. As everyone cheered, Jax did his signature move. He presented me with a soggy, half-eaten birthday card. Inside, someone had helped him potograph it. During his annual checkup, Dr. Alvarez paused. You know why Jax is so special? It's not just that he survived. She pointed to his x-rays. See these old fractures? He should have chronic pain. But look at him. Jax was currently trying to help by holding the vet's clipboard. Dogs like Jax, she said softly, don't just heal, they rewrite their DNA. Every cell in his body has chosen joy. On the drive home, Jax stuck his head out the window, tongue lolling. At a red light, a little boy pointed. Mommy, that dog is smiling. Jax wagged so hard the whole car shook. The reporter leaned in. What's your final message about Jax? I looked at my dog, now sprawled across my feet, one paw possessively on my shoe. People say I rescued him, I said. But the truth? He rescued me right back. Jax chose that moment to sneeze dramatically, then lick the microphone. The segment went viral. That night, as we walked past his tree, now with a small memorial plaque, Jax didn't tense up. He just sniffed it, then lifted his leg like he was signing a contract. Paid in full. Back home, he dragged out every single one of his gifts and arranged them around my bed, a monument to the life we'd built together. When I finally cried, he didn't lick the tears away, just rested his head on my knee, knowing sometimes love means sitting quietly in the hard moments too. A summer thunderstorm knocked out the power just as I realized Jax wasn't in his usual spot by the door. Panic clawed at my throat as I searched the house with a flashlight, calling his name. Then I heard it faint whining from the basement. There was Jax, standing guard over a terrified stray collie who'd somehow gotten trapped when the storm hit. Muddy paw prints told the story. Jax had gone out through the dog door, guided the stranger to shelter, and stayed with her through the worst of the storm. The collie's tags revealed she'd been missing for 3 weeks. When her sobbing owner arrived, Jax gently licked both their faces before collapsing into exhausted sleep. Rusty was a 90-pound German shepherd with a bite history and haunted eyes. The shelter warned us he'd been returned 3 times. When I opened his kennel, Jax did something unprecedented. He lay belly up. Rusty froze. Then, inch by inch, he approached and sniffed Jax's scarred neck, where the rope marks still showed. Something passed between them. That night, I found them curled together, Rusty's massive head resting protectively on Jax's back. 3 months later, Rusty graduated as a certified therapy dog for veterans. At his graduation, he refused to walk the stage without Jax beside him. A well-dressed woman appeared at our rescue center, clutching a familiar crumpled note. "I'm the one who left Jax," she whispered. My blood ran cold. But her story tumbled out. An abusive husband who'd threatened to kill the puppy. A desperate act of mercy in the only safe place she knew. Jax, sensing my tension, did something extraordinary. He brought her his favorite toy, then rested his head in her lap. As she sobbed into his fur, I saw the scars on her wrists that matched his. Now she volunteers with us every Sunday, teaching frightened dogs to trust again. The vet's voice was tight. His blood work shows early kidney disease, likely from malnutrition as a puppy. I crumpled to the clinic floor, clutching Jax as memories flooded back. The rope, the tree, his frail body. But Jax just licked my tears and trotted to the treatment room like he'd been there before. For 6 months of special diets and 4 fluids, he never complained. Then came the miracle, his levels stabilized. I've never seen a dog fight back like this, the vet marveled. Jax celebrated by stealing her stethoscope and presenting it to me like a trophy. Smoke alarms screamed at 3 a.m. Flames licked at our rescue center's kitchen. As volunteers scrambled to evacuate the dogs, Jax broke free and bolted back inside. We found him minutes later, herding 3 terrified puppies through a side door, his fur singed but tail wagging. The fire chief said the electrical fire would have been catastrophic if not caught early. How'd he know? Someone asked. Then we noticed Jax had been sleeping by that outlet for weeks. The same intuition that saved him from that tree had saved them all. We weren't planning to foster again. Then the call came. A puppy mill raid, dozens of dogs in crisis, 1 pregnant female. Bella, named by the volunteers, gave birth that night in our living room, Jax serving as self-appointed midwife. When the runt struggled to nurse, Jax gently nudged him toward Bella. When the puppies took their first wobbly steps, Jax let them climb all over him. And when Bella finally needed rest, Jax herded the squirming pile into his own bed, curling around them protectively. The night we returned the weaned puppies to the shelter for adoption, Jax brought me every single one of his toys, his way of saying they should take his treasures too. The envelope was addressed in shaky crayon. To Jax the brave dog. Inside was a drawing of a boy and a black and tan shepherd, with a note. Thank you for showing my service dog how to not be scared. I was scared too after the hospital. Now we're brave together. Included was a photo of the boy and his dog, a former Jax dog named Captain. That night, I found Jax sleeping with the letter carefully placed on his bed instead of buried in his treasure pile. Some gifts, it seemed, were too precious even for him to hoard. Donations were dwindling. The rescue might close. I sat at the kitchen table, drowning in bills, when Jax started barking frantically. He turned on the TV, a skill I didn't know he had, to a news story about viral animal videos. The next morning, I filmed Jax interviewing each rescue dog by sniffing them, then dramatically nodding or shaking his head. The video got 2 million views. Donations poured in. But Jax's proudest moment? When he approved a gruff businessman's application by stealing his tie, leading to our biggest single donation yet. The mayor's office called it a Community Hero Award. The ceremony was supposed to be simple, until Jax spotted a shy girl in the crowd holding a service dog vest. Without prompting, he walked over, sat at attention, and bowed his head. The girl burst into tears. She'd been too scared to train with the vest after her attack. That spontaneous moment became the award's photo. Now it hangs in every participating shelter with the caption, "Heroism isn't about perfection. It's about showing up broken and choosing to heal together." A new volunteer asked the question I'd been avoiding. Why do you think Jax survived that tree when others don't? I started listing his strength, his will to live, then stopped. Because Jax was currently rolling in grass, blissfully chasing butterflies with our newest rescue, a 3-legged Chihuahua named Peanut. The answer was simple. Jax never saw himself as broken. Not when he was tied up. Not when he was scared. Not even now, with his graying muzzle and slowing steps. He just kept finding joy where it existed. That night, I finally took down the last photo of him at that tree. Not because I'd forgotten, but because he'd taught me we weren't defined by our worst moments. We were defined by what came after. I knew something was wrong when Jax ignored his breakfast. The same meal he'd danced for every morning for 7 years. The vet ran tests, her face growing increasingly grim. "It's not his kidneys," she said quietly. "It's his heart." The words congestive heart failure hit like a physical blow. Jax, sensing my distress, weakly thumped his tail and licked my wrist. That night, I carried him to his favorite spot by the fireplace. The same spot where he'd first trusted me enough to fall asleep in my lap all those years ago. As I stroked his graying muzzle, he sighed contentedly, as if to say, "I'm still here. Pills 3 times a day. Restricted activity. Weekly vet visits." Jax hated every moment of his new reality, until he discovered the power of manipulation. He'd pretend to swallow his medicine, then spit it out when I turned my back. He'd give me those soulful eyes when I said no walks, then somehow escape to gently play with the newest rescue puppies. The vet laughed when I complained. "That stubbornness is why he's still with you," she said. One afternoon, I caught him teaching an anxious Great Dane how to discreetly spit out bitter pills behind the water bowl. I should have been mad. Instead, I kissed his forehead and called him a troublemaker. Word spread about Jax's condition. Soon, our porch became a rotating shrine of homemade dog treats, hand-knitted blankets, and handwritten notes. Mrs. Henderson started bringing over homemade bone broth every Sunday. The mailman left special treats approved by his own aging Labrador. Even the grumpy teenager down the street began stopping by to read to Jax after school. But the most surprising visitor was the jogger, now a middle-aged man with kind eyes, who brought an enlarged photo of that long-ago day at the tree. "I've carried this in my wallet for years," he admitted, "to remind me to always stop." Jax, ever gracious, let him scratch behind his ears. Some mornings he couldn't stand without help. Other days, his breathing came in labored gasps that made my heart stop. But then there were the golden afternoons when the sun would hit the backyard just right, and suddenly my old boy was a puppy again, chasing leaves, slowly, stealing socks with great ceremony, and giving the new rescues his signature look of disapproval when they misbehaved. The vet warned us to track his good days versus bad on the calendar. By month 3, the page was so covered in gold star stickers it looked like a kindergarten art project. A coughing fit at 2 a.m. turned into terrifying minutes where Jax couldn't catch his breath. I raced to the emergency vet, sobbing and praying to a God I wasn't sure I believed in. As they rushed him to treatment, I collapsed in the waiting room, only to be surrounded by strangers. A woman whose cat Jax had comforted during a storm. A man whose daughter's service dog Jax had helped train. The night janitor who remembered Jax always bringing him a toy during late-night visits. When the vet finally emerged, she didn't need to speak. Jax trotted out beside her, tail wagging, with that familiar "what's all the fuss?" look. That night I didn't sleep, just watched his chest rise and fall, etching the rhythm into my memory. For Jax's 10th birthday, the entire neighborhood showed up, former foster dogs now in happy homes, volunteers from the rescue, even the mayor who'd awarded him years earlier. Jax held court from his throne of pillows, accepting gentle pets and vet-approved treats with regal dignity. When it came time for photos, he somehow mustered the energy to do his old trick, gently taking the birthday hat in his mouth to wear it properly. As the crowd cheered, I saw it, the same spark in his eyes from the day we met. Later, as I carried him to bed, his legs too weak now for stairs, he licked away the tear I hadn't realized had fallen. He started leaving gifts in unusual places. His favorite toy tucked in my purse, his leash draped over my shoes each morning, his water bowl carefully pushed next to my side of the bed. At first I thought it was his condition confusing him. Then the vet explained, "He's teaching you, showing you where things belong for when." She didn't finish. That night, I finally opened the folder I'd been avoiding, the one labeled, "When the time comes," that the vet had given me months ago. Jax rested his head on my knee as I read, his warm weight an anchor in the storm of my grief. It started like any other, his soft whine to go outside, the way he still helped make coffee by staring intently at the machine. But somehow we both knew. We visited all his favorite spots. The rescue center where he nuzzled each current resident. The park bench near his tree, now with a plaque reading "Second chances start here." And finally, the vet's office, not for treatment, but for Dr. Alvarez to say goodbye. That evening, as the sunset painted our living room gold, Jax mustered the strength for one last act of service. He carefully arranged all his treasures around us, then rested his head in my lap exactly as he had on our first car ride home. The vet had come to our home. Jax lay on his favorite blanket, surrounded by the smells and sounds he loved. As the medication took effect, I whispered the story of our life together in his ear: the tree, the storms, the rescued dogs, the stolen toys. His tail gave one final thump when I mentioned the jogger. Then he was gone, his body finally still after a lifetime of wagging. But as I clutched his collar, I made a vow: your work isn't done, because that's the thing about dogs like Jax. They teach us that love isn't measured in years, but in the lives we change along the way. The memorial service filled our local park. Dozens of dogs, all touched by Jax in some way, sat quietly as their humans shared stories. The rescue center unveiled a new wing named in his honor. And that scrappy three-legged chihuahua, Peanut, now sleeps in Jax's old bed, but only after carefully arranging Jax's favorite toys around it each night. As for me, I still reach for him when I wake, still catch myself buying his favorite treats. But now, when new volunteers ask about the photo in my office, the one of a scared puppy tied to a tree, I don't cry. I smile and tell them that's where my best friend was waiting to change the world. On the one-year anniversary of Jax's passing, a battered envelope arrived with no return address. Inside was a puppy picture, a black and tan German shepherd with familiar soulful eyes, and a note. This is Jax Jr. His mother was one of the last dogs your Jax helped rescue. He has his father's smile. That night, as the new puppy slept curled in Jax's old blanket, I swore I felt a familiar nudge against my hand. When I looked down, there was nothing there, except maybe, just maybe, the faintest wag of an invisible tail.